Hey there, we are Rob and Joanna Tigan. Welcome back to the Growing Home Together podcast. We've been married for over 30 years and we've parented our 5 kids through all the ages and stages. We're excited to share our passion for caring for the soul of your family with you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Growing Home Together podcast. You know, I remember when I was a little girl and my best friend invited me to a day at the swimming pool. And we paddled around and we laughed and we played, having the best time ever. But then my friend decided to get out of the water, climb the ladder of the highest diving board, and jump with this huge splash into the deep end of the pool. And I remember feeling completely impressed, but then also feeling pressured to make a big jump of my own. So I climbed up to that diving board, I walked out to the end, and then I just completely froze in a panic. And at that point I had a choice. Would I make the leap or would I climb back down the ladder to the safety of the floor? And I was just about to give up and get off that diving board when my friend's mom did something so great. She got in the water and she swam over to the diving board to cheer me on. And knowing that she was on my side and she was waiting for me with open arms, I jumped. And I felt so brave and proud. And I had a blast jumping off that board again and again. Sometimes we just need somebody in our corner to help us tackle the challenge of something new.
That's right. And I know for you and for us as parents, we want to be the kind of mom and dad who help our kids to grow in confidence. And that's why we are so glad to welcome Valerie Ellis back to the show today. Valerie is a mom of 2 boys who is navigating parenthood with her husband every day. She's the author of multiple books for kids, including Let's Go Bible Adventures and her exciting new project, Wild Faith Devotionals for Kids. Valerie is a speaker and the founder of Our Everyday Parables, an online resource full of ideas for families to pursue faith and compassion. Thank you, Valerie, for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, can you just share a little bit more about you and your family?
Absolutely. So we live in Houston. My boys are 14 and 11, and my husband's in ministry, so he supports churches. We do a lot of typical family activities, soccer, school, and church. Yeah, just trying to practice these family discipleship tips that I love to give. We prioritize reading. In fact, sometimes my kids won't talk to me because their noses are in a book. So I'm like, I did this to myself. But yeah, we're just trying to navigate all the things and keep God first and show love to each other. So
I love that. And I love that happy problem of your kids being bookworms. That's fantastic.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, Valerie, I'm guessing as a mom that you have plenty of experience in watching your boys try new things. Is there any particular moment that stands out in your mind?
So many, actually. But one with my younger son that I really got a lot of takeaways from was when his friend asked if he wanted to do this trial jiu-jitsu class with him. And I just assumed it would be a big yes, because he loves to do like ninja poses and he's always, imagining adventures. And so I was like, this will be a no-brainer. And then he said no. And so I, at first thought, well, this is probably he's nervous. So I just launched into all of these things because, well, to take a step back, my kids probably came by this naturally from me, but, we've dealt with a bit of anxiety in their growing up years. So we have all these tools and things that we practice to get over either anxious thoughts at bedtime or trying new things or, being brave in those moments. And I loved your story, Joanna. And so I start launching into all of these, tips and tools that we've used. And he's like, Mom, I'm not nervous about it. I just don't want a busy schedule. And so I was like, oh, okay. So Mom is jumping the gun here. And it really reminded me that, sometimes the first step when kids are reluctant to try new things is just to be curious and to get with them and try to understand them. And I loved your story about how your friend's mom got in the water. She was right there with you. She wasn't just coaching from the sideline. And so that's just such a beautiful picture.
Yeah, I think we can all identify with those times where we are sure where the conversation's going with our kids and they throw a curveball on us. But I do think sometimes it's also hard to understand as a parent how to understand why our kids are feeling anxious or afraid at different experiences. What do you think are some of the underlying reasons our kids might struggle in stepping into new things?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Well, one thing I think is common to all of us is just we don't know how the new thing is going to turn out. And we can tend to focus on the negative and focus on what all the bad things that could happen, or, how we might fail or look silly or whatever. And so sometimes just remembering that most of the time, those things aren't going to happen. And so what I would do with one of my kiddos was we would just imagine a better ending. Like there are a lot of possible scenarios. Why do we want to focus on the ones that, are negative or the ones that are scaring you? Let's focus on all of these possible endings that could happen. So I think that's one that's really common. And then, sometimes they just don't want to get out of that routine or that, I don't want to say rut, but just like that comfort zone. Like with my kiddo, when he was like, I just don't want a busy schedule, I just reminded him, well, this is a trial class. Depending on how much you love it or don't love it is going to depend on if it's going to impact your schedule. So just sometimes not wanting to get out of that routine. And I'm curious, you guys have done the parenting thing. What other reasons have you seen that kids resist new things?
Right. Well, I know for ours, in so many things, so many activities just have this inherent competitive element to them because, if they go into a new class at school, they're graded and they're scored. And then if they join a team sport, there's always a winner and a loser. And, we have band kids. So if it's the band or the orchestra, there's probably a first chair seat that everybody wants to achieve. So it's hard to help our kids feel okay with kind of their level of performance instead of feeling that pressure to be the best. And if they go into something with that kind of pass, fail, win, lose mindset, that can really hold them back, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think I've seen that with my kids as they've gotten older. And sometimes they don't always express it. It sometimes comes out sideways as like anger or apprehension or even just like sullenness. And then when I get to the bottom of what's going on, I'm like, wow, they are just really scared of looking silly in front of their friends, or they're just really scared of, like you said, not achieving that highest place.
Hmm.
So that's really difficult. And again, I go back to like coming alongside them and just letting them know what my expectation is, which is for you to grow. And so we've done this a lot with soccer where it's like, I would love for you to go out and have the game of your life, or I'd love for you to get that A plus plus. But, looking at the long term view of what I want for you and what I think you can do is growing to become that person that God wants you to be, growing to become that compassionate person, someone with their eyes on God, and someone who, yes, is achieving, but no one expects you to go out there and be perfect right now.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And, we are also adoptive parents. And from what we've learned from other adoption experts, is a lot of times there can kind of be this tie between a child's trauma and their security. And so, with that performance piece, that can really attach itself to their security and their identity as a person. So they can internalize this belief that if they don't fit in or they don't succeed, that they're somehow going to lose the love and the approval of the people that matter most to them. So, what are some ways that we can communicate just unconditional love and support to our kids when they're walking into something new?
That's such a good question. And, honestly, the first thing that jumped to mind was to get some other people in your corner to communicate that to them. So I know as parents, we often are intentional about doing things that communicate our unconditional love. So we're making eye contact. We're trying to stop like what we're doing to show value to them, not because of something you do, but just because of who you are, and becoming interested in what they're interested in before we expect them to go out and do these new things. But a lot of times with my kids, they've even told me, well, you have to do that. You're my mom. You have to, basically what they're saying without saying is, you have to love me unconditionally, because you're my mom. You would love me no matter what, which is true. And so it's really valuable when their grandparent or the friend at church or even their peer can come alongside and communicate those messages. Sometimes that happens naturally, which is great. But as parents, we can also set that up to where we're like, this is what my child's needing right now. Like, what can you do to help? And often, I don't have to do the rest of it. It's just mentioning the need. And then that person who cares about them kind of takes it from there.
Oh, that's a really good word. Yeah, I think we do need to remember that we're not parenting in isolation, but we have a whole community who can rally around our kids. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when I remember a time when I was a kid, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, and so every year I was the new kid at school. And I remember one year, middle school is hard enough as it is, but was a particular hard year for me to connect, being that new kid. And so over the lunchtime, I just didn't want to have to put up with being the unknown kid, and so I just go home over lunch hour, and I did that for several months until my mom realized that this was probably not helping me get
Mm.
connected to the school. And so she kind of cut me off and no more lunches at home for you. And so how can we know when to give our kids more time and space? Because, or, maybe to give them a little push out the nest. Because I know that was a pivotal turning point for me to start actually engaging with other kids and got me over that hump. And so she needed to do that. I didn't like it at the time. So how as parents do we navigate that?
Yeah, that's a really hard question because I think it varies depending on the situation, the kid, and then how many times have we been pushing lately? Like, I think there's always going to be an ebb and flow, and times where we will need to push as parents, and times when we're going to just need to maybe not get our way and let the child make the decision to not do the thing. But one thing I think can help us navigate that is practicing normalizing and empathizing whatever feelings the child's having in that apprehension, whether it's wanting to stay in the comfort zone or being afraid, or like in your situation, not wanting to be that new kid and attract that attention and take those brave steps. It can be my habit as a parent who just wants what's best for them to say, it's going to be fine. Everything will be great. But then that kind of skips over the feelings that they're feeling. And I feel like makes them hold on to those feelings even more tightly. Whereas if I can be more empathetic and use a phrase like, well, yes, I understand. I've felt that way before, or it's normal. It's totally normal to feel that way in this situation. That can actually help them loosen the grip on those feelings and give us kind of that indicator of like, is this a time to push or is this a time to hold back and let them decide? And I think in your situation, your mom probably saw like this could be setting the course for the rest of the school year or the rest of this, however long you were at that school. And so that would be a time to push. If you see that it's like not just a jujitsu class, like my son, who, if like he went to the trial class or not, it wasn't that high stakes. But in your situation, that could have really set the tone for the rest of your academic life at that school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. A good point. And I think some of those principles too. I know another thing, and we've run into this as parents, and we've talked to other parents where this is always a struggle of with your kids to know when you do sign them up for something new, piano lessons or the sport or whatever, and they're not enjoying it, and you kind of are constantly hearing that, I don't want to practice, I don't want to do this, I don't. Parents struggle with like, okay, how do I use this as an opportunity to teach them courage and to teach them perseverance, and yet when is it okay to say, maybe this isn't your thing, or maybe we'll try something else, and because I know if we would have done that with piano lessons on our kids, they would have quit at about week 3. um and so that's always a challenge. And I think some of the suggestions you brought up work well for that too, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that as well.
Yes, that's also a really tough one and something we're actually dealing with now with piano, with that exact example. One thing that I've been able to do because I know his piano teacher is kind of tell her a little bit about our struggle and let her tailor either the songs they're picking or the structure of the lesson to get the goal. Like it's not my goal for him to be a concert pianist or even to continue with music necessarily, but I want to give it enough time to where that's a skill, a gift that he has that he can use or not, and not give up on it too early. And so, just communicating that to her can let her make it more fun for him, or, more flexible, or just kind of focus in on the end goal is not this great performance, but it's just to have that gift of music. So that's one idea, is to, communicate with whoever, else is interacting with your child, and see if you guys can come up with a win-win. Also, in some cases, a practical idea is to focus on others. And so in this situation with the piano, but I think it applies to a lot of situations, actually, his friend was telling him, who's also in piano, he was like, but now we understand that, this is a gift we can give to others, and started listing off all the reasons, and sometimes that focusing on others, like, this is something that I can do. Like, maybe it's a child in a play or performing, that is a nerve-wracking situation. But if it's something that's going to maybe benefit other people, it can help them kind of get over that. And then, it depends also on the age of the child. Like, when my son, who's now 14, did his very, very first soccer season, it went fine. It went great. But I also knew that he was just as interested in sitting at home and playing as he was in being out on the soccer field with his friends. So it was my intention to just be like, okay, the season's over. Let's celebrate. Next season comes up and it's like, okay, it's time for soccer again. Just to give him, like I said, that little bit of extra time. He wasn't like hating it or anything. But then my husband, at the end of the season, and he won't mind that I'm telling on him here because I've told this story before, he was like, so do you want to do soccer again? Now, my husband's a soccer player, so I'm sure he wanted that super buy-in. And my son was like, nah, I'm good. And I was like, that wasn't the plan. Of course, I didn't communicate the plan to my husband, but I was like, that wasn't the plan. We were just going to sign up for soccer again. Like, this is what we do until they reach that point when they're older. And this is the point I'm getting at, is that now that my kids are older, we have those discussions. And I really try to lay it out for them, like my expectations and also why I want this for them. So, like, whether it's soccer, piano, or academics, really communicating. And this is really important for kids like ages 10 and up. I'm learning the good things I see in them that are making me want this for them. So, not to be like, I want you to be the most high achieving person, but I see a gift here, or I see this could help you in your future. And just to remind them that we are thinking about them, because especially as kids get to that teen age, things can kind of be filtered through that negative filter even more. And they can make assumptions and not tell us, well, mom and dad just want to push me into things. So they just want me to be perfect and they just want this and want that. That's really none of our intention. But they're probably not going to come out and say that to us. So we have to be proactive and get out there ahead of that and say, this is why I want this. And then, with the older kids, have that discussion of like, can we make this work? Like, and then they have to have some buy-in too. That's just kind of my opinion, that as they get older, they need to have more and more say over what they're doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And some of what I'm hearing you say is that our kids can kind of fall into this all or nothing mindset. Like, I love it or I hate it. I want to do it. I don't want to do it. And there isn't a lot of gray. And at least for our kids, sometimes helping them pursue maybe change rather than just opting out can be helpful. Kind of like you were describing with the piano lessons. Like, let's see if we can shift the way these lessons are put together to make it a little more positive for him. And you have me thinking about our daughter. She started at a new school, I think as a freshman, and was having a hard time with all the new. And there was one class in particular that was creating a lot of stress for her. And our daughter is a very committed student. So she really was trying, but that was ramping up the whole thing to where I don't even know if I want to be here. I don't want to get in the car in the morning. And the school was awesome because they heard her feelings and then agreed that she could take this one class online in a study hall rather than having to go into that classroom every day.
Yes.
And just making that one change broke her out of that all or nothing thinking, where she finished the year strong. So yeah, I think kind of like you're encouraging us, a little creativity, a little brainstorming, a little reaching out to the people involved can really go a long way to helping our kids stick with something.
Yes. And a little give and take. I love that they heard her and that she didn't have to get loud. Because sometimes when we don't listen to our kids, they feel like they have to get really loud. And that's when things get really stressful for everybody. But they just heard that, just this past weekend, my son had a piano recital scheduled with this beautiful song that he'd been working really hard on. And a soccer game came up that was kind of last minute. It was actually a low stakes game. It wasn't for really like the season. It was a scrimmage, but he really wanted to do that. And he said, look, I'm going to keep working on this song. I'll play it for the family or somewhere. I will play it, but can I do this soccer game? And of course, I wasn't going to get my money back for the recital, but I also was like, this is something I can give him. Like, we're doing this give and take thing. So I felt really good about it. And I let him do the game. And I think it was actually a positive thing in the whole piano saga. And so I love that they really listened to her.
Yeah, that's good. This kind of plays on what you were saying too, Joanna. Is sometimes giving things a time limit too. With our kids, we told them that we really, whatever music they decided they wanted to go into or whatever, and we're camping on the music thing, but this is just an example, that piano was a great foundation. So we wanted each of them to stick with it for a couple years, which granted 2 years to a kid feels like 10 years, in adult time. And then they could make a decision. Every one of them decided to stop at the 2-year mark. And every one of them now as young adults look back and regret stopping.
Well, yeah, our first 4. Yeah. It took 5 tries to get a child to actually love the piano.
Yeah.
So we're enjoying that as much as we can with the 5th one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that can help kids too, and also it maybe takes off what you were talking about, some of that, like where we're just, we're trying to get you to be an overachiever and get, the high mark. If we just say, we want you to try this for this period, this season, and then we'll reevaluate, or this is another way that maybe will help. But with that in mind, I also want, one thing that we can know for sure, and this, I think science backs this up and the Bible backs this up, that a lot of these struggles with our confidence and with kids' confidence starts in the mind. And so I was going to ask, what are some ways that we can help our kids interpret their fears and understand their fears and change their mindset in those when they're moving into new situations of any kind?
Yes, I love that question because I feel like we've definitely dealt with that. And I know that kids really all across the nation are experiencing a lot of anxiety and fear over certain things. And so I have done a lot with my kids and just with researching this. I'm not a therapist or anything like that. But one thing that we've tried a couple little strategies, and a lot of them have to do with understanding how our brains work. The more we can understand our thinking or think about thinking, then the better off we are. And research backs that up too. So just like I was saying before, empathizing, like it's normal to feel that way, naming the feelings. So like whether it's with a feelings chart or just, describing the feelings, talking about how the feelings feel in your body. And particularly what I'm learning about anxiety is sometimes we feel the anxiety in our bodies, and that makes us more anxious because we're like, it feels like something is wrong. And so we can help kids reframe that by saying, when you feel anxious and you feel like sweaty palms and your heart's racing faster, maybe you feel a stomach pain, your body is getting ready for a big moment. So it might feel uncomfortable, but you don't have to be afraid of those feelings. There's really nothing wrong. It's just your body's getting you ready for this big moment. So that can help kind of stop that spiral of like, I feel nervous and now I'm feeling the feelings in my body and now I'm more nervous and now I feel more feelings in my body. So just, to try to encourage them. And I know even when I was a kid, we talked about like when you have a play to do or something, you want to be a little bit nervous because that actually heightens everything and just helps you to be more in the moment and more ready to do that performance or whatever. But then also some strategies that can kind of help calm those thoughts down. One thing my kids still talk about is how feelings are like the weather and we are more like a mountain. So when there's a rain, it's going to pass over the mountain. When there's sun, it will be sunny for a while and then the sun is going to go down. but God is with us. So we're like right there with our steady God, and the feelings are going to change. And so sometimes like that can help a child know, like, I'm going to feel nervous for a little while. Like my friend, going back to talking about focusing on others, which is, I think, is another strategy to overcome anxiety too. Her son was getting ready to perform for some folks at a nursing home, and he was really nervous and wanted to back out. And she was like, look, I know this feels uncomfortable to feel nervous, but they're going to feel so happy. And they're probably going to have really good memories of this for a long time. And once you're done, you're going to stop feeling nervous and you're probably going to forget all about it. So that kind of helped him see, like, this is just temporary. And then when those thoughts get really, oppressive, one thing we have talked about is like thinking about them as a balloon. And we have, like if the thought is like a gray balloon, we don't have to be afraid of it. We can look at it and be like, oh, it's a gray balloon. What am I going to do with it? And let it go. And then look around for different thoughts that could be helpful. Like I mentioned earlier, we would do this thing where we would imagine a better ending. Let's all imagine all the good things that could happen from this, and try to just, like the Bible says in Philippians, think about what's good and lovely and beautiful. And that can be really helpful in just helping us get out of that fear mindset.
Yeah. And you have me thinking about faith is required when we don't know what is ahead, right? And so it is such a comfort, God's promises in the word to be with us wherever we go. And because of that, we can be strong and courageous, like you were saying. I realize, though, how sometimes I have so much more information than my kids do, and how I have sometimes fallen down on the job of not preparing them even with expectations. Like for my kids and the way they're wired, being able to give them a little fuller picture of what to expect is really helpful. And I'm thinking about probably our oldest son's biggest meltdown he's ever had was at a karate tournament. And karate was his favorite thing in the whole wide world. He'd been working and working and working on multiple practices a week. These were all his best friends. He loved his instructor. We thought this was going to just be a high point to get to go to this event and get his new belt. And wasn't that exciting? And then we get there and they're trying to get this huge crowd of kids in all of the placements in the room where they needed to be. And we didn't realize it, but he had two different instructors giving him two different instructions. And so all of a sudden, any of the expectations he'd walked in with just fell apart. And now he's like, I don't know who I'm supposed to please. I don't know where I'm supposed to stand. All the things I expected have fallen apart on me. And he just couldn't cope, And so that was outside of our control. But even with our other kids, this is where mom and dad are going to be sitting. This is what time it starts. This is what time it's over. This is where we're going afterwards. This is what you can wear. Just kind of helping them visualize all the little details that to us seem so minor, but for them seem to sort of give them some anchor points to make things a little bit less scary.
Absolutely. And I love, how practical that is. And we would often try to be the first person to an event that the kids were nervous about to get that lay of the land, or if we could even go early and a different day and look around the area. Because like you said, there's so many things that are unknowns. If we can just make a couple of them more clear, it can seem less overwhelming. We would also, just to kind of get really practical along those lines, sometimes arrange to ride with friends, knowing that when you're with a friend and you're joking around, it can just make that car ride seem much easier. And once you get there, you have someone you're going around with that also doesn't know all the things. That's another thing we tried to do. And then, like you said, just try to make what's in our heads known to them. So like putting things on the calendar in black and white, even if they can't read yet, it really helps them to see, like, this is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. You can use pictures, but even just them knowing, like, mom says this, that's happening next. So I love that. And just trying to also find the fun, and so as you're getting ready for those things, those big events, whether it's playing music or knowing that no matter how you perform at this event or what grade you make, we're going to go celebrate. We're going to celebrate your effort and your hard work. And that can also help kind of take the pressure off and take their minds off of all those unknowns.
That's good. The other side of that, since Joanna did a confession of falling down on the job, I will too, because I think another piece of that sometimes is the follow-up. Like sometimes I think when our kids go through something, it's easy to be like, whew, we're done with that, or just move on to the next thing, rather than on the other end, using it as an opportunity to teach as well. So, maybe there's a lot of fear on the front end, and then they do the thing and they're really, they're coming off the high. And, you can use that as an opportunity to say, remember how afraid you were? And, you leaned into that fear, and, look at these good things that happen. Or even if it doesn't go as they planned, maybe they did fall on their face or whatever at this, the speech or the talent show or whatever. And coming back and saying, but look at how much courage you had to stand up there, and look at what you learned. So there's sometimes we quickly move, whether it's good or bad as a parent, onto that next thing. And it's like there's the afterward teaching opportunity too that we need to grab a hold of.
I love that. And I feel like I do that myself, right? I'm getting ready for something and I'll get it done and check it off and not reflect on either, like you said, well, it didn't go as badly as I thought it would. So maybe next time I can have more faith, more confidence, or that did not go the way I thought it was, but here I am. I'm still breathing. I'm still, I'm still here. I can try again. I've learned things. And I think that we can, just like putting things on the calendar and making things very plain and black and white, we can be more overt with our challenges and what we're going through and stay mindful of like what we might be modeling unconsciously to our kids. If we're telling them like, I'm going to use a really silly example in just a second. So that's why I started laughing. But if we're telling them, go out and do these new things, and yet whenever we have something new coming across our plate, we're, not showing that trust in God and not showing that reflection and that balance of just like, yeah, that was really hard, but look what I did. Look how brave I was. But one time, so I have been trying over the kids' lives to be more overt with that. And for some reason, to me, buying ice at the grocery store just is like, I don't know. Someone else always does it. It's not my thing that I do. And so, but I had to do it one time. And I was like, what do I do? Do I pay for it? I grab it? I don't know. Are they going to just let me walk out with it? And I was like, thinking about all this, but I came home with the ice and I told the kids, I was like, I bought the ice and I went into it, made it silly, but just kind of modeling that. Like we all encounter new things every day. And sometimes kids see us as like, oh, the parent. And I just even think about my Christian walk and how much I've grown since I was their age. But now what they're seeing is just, of course, I have a long way to go, but what they're seeing is like, just current me. So sometimes I'll try to just open up the past and be like, these are some things I struggled with. And sometimes buying ice is hard, and I did it.
Yeah, I love that. And you're making me think about that really fantastic article that you wrote recently for Focus on the Family on this topic, and how you have such intentionality about just building change and new experiences into your daily life as a family. It's like if you practice new things and you practice change just as part of your day to day, then when those new events happen, they probably are cut a little more down to size. So, can you kind of explain why that's important to just invite some change into our routine and then some creative ways that we can do that?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that most of us like our routines and our comfort zones, but but I guess some people are more naturally bent towards like trying that every new sport that becomes popular and trying every new type of food. And some of us have to work a little bit more hard at it. But either way, we can just kind of, like I've been saying, make that overt. And so, like, whenever things were, especially when things were shut down, we found ourselves during the pandemic, we found ourselves just embracing a lot of new things. And one thing I said, I was like, I'm going to learn to eat with chopsticks. Like there is no purpose in it. I just wanted to learn something new. Part of that was because I knew like I'm asking my kids to do a lot of new things every day. Like I want to push myself to learn something new. And then, but sometimes we'll do it as a family, like taking up pickleball, which I know is really popular now. But when it was new, it was like, what is this pickleball? Just trying to make that a habit. And we're not perfect at it, especially with our busy schedule, but just trying to do that And then having those examples to fall back on that were kind of crafted. They weren't super stressful, but they were a positive thing that we can point back to and be like, look, you did this brave thing, or you did this new thing when you didn't even know what it was.
That's really fun. I love that.
Yeah, I know this is a fun stage for me because I'm not just a dad, but I'm also a grandpa. So my oldest grandson, he's turning 4 in a few weeks, and he's going to pretty soon need to have some of that confidence we're talking about as he steps into preschool and all these new things. So what are some ways we can help the younger kids and the toddlers and preschoolers that are trying new things? Do you have some suggestions for that?
Yeah. So I think that the great thing about having older kids is that they're capable of that reasoning and thinking about their thoughts and all the things we've been talking about. Whereas the younger ones maybe have that a little bit, but it's not fully developed. But the gift that we have with little ones is play. Something that's not working for my kids right now as 11 and 14-year-olds, but back when they were toddlers, and having that playful ability to, whether it's disarm, their fears, or distract, or, just help them to see the lighter side of something, is really a gift. So we don't want to sleep on that as parents and grandparents. And so, a lot of times when they were little, and like, let's use the example you said of taking that step to preschool. Okay, it's one thing for mom and dad to say, like, okay, you're going to this new school. But sometimes I'd have their stuffed animals tell them, like, okay, it's time to get your backpack. It's time to get your shoes on. And for some reason, it's not like they really thought the animal was talking. They knew it was mom, but it just made it that magical thing that was like a little bit disarming, and just kind of help them get up and go to overcome that. Because a lot of times kids will get stuck. And so if we can just be playful to help them get unstuck. I've probably used this example in the past, but like, if whether it's routine things or new things, being silly about it, like, oh, does this backpack go on my head? Does it go on my foot? Is this my shoe? And just helping them be silly can get that kind of buy-in. But
Oh, you're just making me think about when our youngest was around 2 years old and he got diagnosed with asthma. And so he had the very new challenge of learning how to use a nebulizer. And so it's the mist and the mask and the noise and having to sit there till the whole vial is empty. And it was just not a great thing for a little guy. And so it's one of my favorite family memories. The play that you're talking about, his big siblings would come in the room when we had to turn the nebulizer on, and they would literally do the hokey pokey in the living room in front of him. And he thought that they were so funny and so silly. He forgot all about this annoying mask on his face. And there was just something about the hokey pokey that made the nebulizer doable for him. So I love that.
mhm. Yes. Yes. I love that. Yay for older siblings. And
Right.
little ones just think other kids are the most entertaining things. So that's a gift too. Yeah, definitely. And then, just helping them, we can start to help them name those feelings and have those more serious talks about, like, mom and dad this is when we're coming back. This is what, this is where we're going to drive up to get you, or whatever, if it's a separation anxiety thing. But trying to keep it fun, whether it's like, let's hop like a kangaroo over to the car, or giving them choices a lot of times will help. So letting them pick like what to wear, or setting routines like well before. So I had a friend whose son had special needs, and he really struggled when he grew out of his favorite shirts, really struggled with trying new ones. And so she and her husband said, well, let's just make Wednesday new shirt day. So this is something that we know is going to happen on Wednesday. It's going to be a new shirt. And then they could put their energy into that as parents and as a family. And then their son knew what to expect. And of course, over time, he's wearing new shirts. And so that was something that we can implement with our kids too. If we know there's a big thing like preschool coming up, we can start in advance, like getting things ready and getting routines done so that we know that they're ready.
That's good.
That is good. Yeah. Well, Valerie, we've been talking a lot today about tackling new things. And I know that you yourself have tackled an amazing new book project called The Wild Faith Devotional for Kids. And we would just love to know what led you to write this book and how it can help our kids to find their confidence in God.
Yes. So, I mean, kids love animals. And one thing I love to do as an author is to look at the things that kids love and see how can we bring God into that, or how can we illuminate that God's already there with us by looking at things that kids love. And so animals are just an amazing part of God's creation that can point us to him, first of all, just by looking at the amazing ways that he created them and all of their features and behaviors and just their physiology. But then also in this book, we take the animal behaviors and attributes and say, how can this point us to God in a little bit deeper way? And so, I'll use the example of the gibbon. As the gibbon in this book, we use to point to the fact that God can help us do new things. So gibbons actually learn through play and learn by taking risks. And so as they're swinging through the canopy of the forest, they'll intentionally let go of a branch and fall and grab another branch as practice, so that later when they're in, a chase or they're going to get food, if they do fall, they've had a lot of practice doing that. And so in that devotion, we encourage kids, like, you can be playful and practice new things. That's kind of like what each devotion does. There's 52 animals and they all have different themes, whether it's perseverance or family, friendship, or, even more serious things like God sees your heart. He knows every part of you and loves you so much, or God can restore you when you've had a loss. So all the different animals each have a different theme that they point to.
It's really great. I know we are blessed to be holding a copy right now, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I know Rob's already told me at least 3 times how excited he is to read that with our grandson. So yeah, I hope everyone can check it out.
It's a great book. And as we were saying before we hit record here, the fact that it's got these wonderful illustrations and some photography, and it's both, faith-filled and informational. And so it's just got a lot packed in it. So I'm excited. I'm excited to read it myself. This is like when I get the grandkids like Hot Wheels and stuff so I can play with them. I can use my grandkid as a reason to dive into this book, because I'm excited about learning about these animals and the scriptures. So
I hear that from a lot of adults. And I was on a radio program. We were talking on air, and then, on the break, the producer got on and he was like, wait, what is this animal? So it is interesting for kids and adults alike.
For sure, for sure. And, I know as parents, our kids are going to be stretched and challenged in lots of different ways. And as parents, we need strength too. And, I'm thinking of Joshua 1:9 that says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And I was wondering if you could just pray for listeners today, that they would just, as parents, grab a hold of that promise that God will be with us as we raise our kids, and also that their kids, that God will be with their kids and give them that courage they need as well.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Lord, our Creator, God, Jesus, we thank you that we can come to you anytime. And we pray, Lord, that you would prompt us when we are experiencing new things, whether it be with our kids, with our jobs, with our faith, Lord, that our reaction would be to go to you first. We know that you would never ask us to do anything that you're not willing to help us with. And so we just thank you that you are with us in all of these things, that you have called us to be strong and courageous because you're going to give us that courage. And so, Lord, we rely on you as we go out and face new things, as we maybe just see our daily tasks in a new way, that we would be strong and courageous, that we would rely on you, and that we would remember that you're with us wherever we go. We love you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Valerie. This time has just been another just precious hour with you. So I know our friends are going to want to learn more about you, all your resources, and about your exciting new book. So where is the best place to connect with you online?
Well, you can go to my website, valerieellis.com. There you'll find all of my books, which actually you can get wherever books are sold, but you'll find a sneak peek into each of them and some free resources you can download that you can use with kids, whether or not you have the book. And they're very fun and interactive for the Wild Faith Devotional. There are things like Sudoku and crosswords for Let's Go Bible Adventures. There are things like sensory bins and things you can do with cars and trucks to interest kids. And then I'm also at oureverydayparables.com, which has book reviews and discipleship resources for parents and for churches and schools that they can use to just help kids see God in the everyday moments and in the books they're reading. And then I'm on Instagram at I am Valerie Ellis, and I love to talk over there and just get a little bit more personal with people. So I love to find you over there too.
That sounds great. We will make sure we put all of that in the show notes so people can check those out to get all those links and all that information. So thank you so much, Valerie, for joining us today. It's always a lot of fun getting to have you back on the show.
You guys are the best. I've had so much fun. Thank you.
And thank you, friends, for joining us on the Growing Home Together podcast today. Rob and I would love to connect with you over on our website at growinghometogether.com. You're going to find all kinds of resources to help you pray for your kids, to connect with them through conversation cards, and to share a lot of laughter with Rob's Laugh Out Loud Jokes for Kids series of books. At Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family.
And growing home together with you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growing Home Together podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found some valuable insights to help you care for the soul of your family. Remember to check out growinghometogether.com for more resources, and stay tuned for our next episode coming your way soon.